Hey all. So, over the last week or so, I completed all nine of Volume 2 of Carina's challenges, helpfully summarized here in Cat Murdoch's infographic. I will be using this to go over it because I just find this significantly more clear than looking at it in text. People ask a lot of questions along these, like, oh, well, are you allowed to bring other people on the team or something? And I think that Kat has made it very clear here. She even put this down in the corner. You cannot bring anyone else. Puts all of the rewards in graphical form. Just her infographics are fantastic. I'll put a link to the whole folder in the description. Check them out if you haven't. She's awesome. So, these rewards are really, really solid. You can see here at the bottom what you get for completing all of them is a full T3A and T6B. So one of each of the catalysts that you need three of to take a champion to rank 4 as a 6-star. Plus a pretty decent chunk of Sig Stones. There's also this nice little profile picture, but that's purely a speed thing. If it's not feasible for you to finish these by April 6th, I wouldn't worry about it. So I'm going to go over basically what I did for each of these challenges, but I'm also going to link in the description the playlist of me streaming all of these. Out of all of these challenges, there is exactly half of one fight that I did not stream. The very first one I did, there's this one warlock that I was having some trouble with. I finished it up off stream because it was having a bit of a day, and came back. So that's not captured, but I'll walk you through that when we get to that one. Everything else is on stream. And one of my projects this week is going to be going through all of those live stream recordings and time stamping them so that you can go and look at specific fights if you're trying to use them as a benchmark. So before we get into each of these individual ones, I do want to say that I was able to complete all 9 of these, spending 139 units, period. I spent 19 units turning off willpower for Revolution, and I spent 120 units to buy 3 revives to finish off the collector after burning through my stash with Carina's challengers. Everything else I farmed, or came out of my pre-existing stash, but mostly farmed. And I say that because that can be you too. It is possible to do these without spending money, without, being the best player in the world, because I'm proud of my skill set, but at the same time, go watch my Luke Cage attempt in the Carina's Challengers, and you'll realize that I have plenty of room to improve. So, planning out these paths, trying to be efficient with it, and farming ahead of time, I think is really important. Which is why I'm going to go over what I did, but I also want you to be aware of alternatives, what fits your roster best, and how much prep you have to do. So, let's start off with the Realm of Legends ones. I think these are generally considered the easiest. They are definitely the lowest barrier to entry because you only have to use 3 stars. So the resources required to get ready for these are extremely easy to come by. I actually did not have, I think, any of the champions that I used except She-Hulk already ranked. Yeah, I had to take Aegon, Gilly 99, and Mr. Fantastic from like rank 1, level 1, all the way to the top. But it was really easy. Like I picked up I opened some crystals I'd been sitting on for a long time. Now that Kabam has revamped the rotating daily class catalysts, if you don't have the tier 1 or 2 class catalysts that you need for these, check those out. These are really easy to prep for. Additionally, if you play well, the resource cost is pretty darn low. I think off the top of my head I was able to do the robot one without revives and maybe just with a couple potions at one point to make sure that Gilly didn't get too low. You basically want to use her for the entire thing, honestly. Like, there are other robots that can do solid damage that have healing, Like you could probably, I'm thinking Darkhawk or maybe even Sentinel or Warlock, Nimrod. Like there are others that could do certain things for you, but just trust me, if you have a 3-star Guillotine 99, which you probably do if you're a Thronebreaker, use her and only her. Even for Wolverine, like I had the most laughable regen or the most laughable RNG possible on when his regen lined up with my heal reversal. Still the fastest and easiest fight on the whole lane. Use Gilly. That one was honestly quite easy. It's just a matter of making sure you don't get hit too much. I recommend using the lifesteal pre-fight for all of them. It does mean that you get less regen and you have a little bit less power drain on your special one, but personally I found that worth it because I wasn't getting hit much and I was using it to heal back chip damage. If you are getting hit more often and you need the regen, then maybe don't use that, but play that by ear after taking the Winter Soldier and maybe the Captain Marvel fight a couple times. See how she feels to you. Aegon, most of the fights are incredibly easy. You just have to bank a really high combo on Winter Soldier. You can maybe do it on Captain Marvel too. The thing to consider is that Winter Soldier does not have a difficult special one evade, but by the 20th or 21st time you do it, maybe you get clipped, especially since inputs are still what they are. If you feel like that might happen to you, then what I recommend is pick a number that you're comfortable with building your combo up to and kind of cut out at where that is. So my Aegon wasn't at his max SIG level. I think I was only banking like 56% of my combo. So I quit out at 400 a couple times, banked up about 500 combo that way, and then just kept going. Now, the one fight on this path that is somewhat difficult is the Wolverine fight. I have a separate video on that if you're having any trouble with it or if you're worried about it. There's a lot of things said about it. I'm going to link that in the description specifically. It's also in the playlist. Just do yourself a favor and watch that if you're concerned with that fight, because you can just keep going. That's the long and short of it. Get a high enough combo, he shuts down the fight, you don't have to worry about it. And then this last one, there are a number of champions in here that can do it. I know people who did it with Scarlet Witch, relying on her healing. I know people who did a lot of the fights with Magneto because he can turn off the metal defenders. Doctor Strange could probably do it, just very slowly. If you're better with Namor, he has healing and decent damage, you could do that. I know some people used Black Panther or Rogue. Again, solid damage and or healing. I did every single fight with either She-Hulk or Mr. Fantastic, because they have a synergy together that gives both of them access to power stings. Reed can ramp up really well if you follow the strategy of using all three of his pre-fights, letting them fall off, get both of the careful study passives, then ramp him back up. If that doesn't make sense to you as I describe it, check out the stream associated with this particular challenge. You'll pretty quickly see what I mean. I did not start that way, but KT1 pretty quickly set me straight, and it was smooth sailing from there. And then She-Hulk you use against the extra large defenders because she ramps her Furies better against them, and the power stings scale with her Fury attack, so she just demolishes those. These three combos down here are all quite simple. You can get 3 6 stars from these dual class crystals. You can get your choice of 3/4 of a tier 5 class catalyst. Even if you're not planning on doing the rest of these, highly recommend doing those quickly. So the Act 6 ones are definitely the next. Dr. Octopus is possibly the most skill intensive of these, this Sick Beast of a Player one. I do personally think that you will find this one a lot easier if your Doc Ock is duped. Doesn't have to be a high Sig, but I did put some tech Sig Stones into my 5-star to make this easier. I tried using the 6-star, which has the benefit of adrenaline, was not nearly as smooth as using the 5-star at the same level. So I ended up doing almost everything with my rank 4 5-star and just used the 6-star kind of against hard fights if I needed to burn down his health. But That one is quite solid. A lot of people are taking the unblockable finale path. You can take that one. I personally hate fighting Joe Fixit since his update. You'll see me struggle with that one a little bit if you watch the stream. I'll also be sure to timestamp the point at which I move over to the resistor path, along which basically the only at all difficult fight is Annihilus. I'm pretty comfortable fighting Annihilus. That was the better choice for me. Definitely take one of those two, depending on your comfort level. Havoc can be kind of tricky, but I talk through how that fight goes. I'll be sure to timestamp that at the end of the path as well. Check that out. There are a lot of good videos on that. This one you can do, but you want to make sure you are comfortable with how Doc's kit works. So also check out, linked in the description, Campo MC's short guide on Doc Ock to get a handle on his kit. So, new heroes and foes. This one I actually quite enjoyed because for a lot of the path clearing I used either Hyperion or Ultron, who are two of my old favorites. Hyperion was my first rank 5 5-star, and Ultron was my first rank 4 4-star, way back in the day. And so it was really fun to use both of them. I had Wolverine on the team, and he did a little bit of work, but I basically just used him in a couple places to try and lean on his regen. You definitely don't need him. A lot of these champions are solid. The path you take on this one is going to depend on who you have ramped up. Like, I took Delirium because I was comfortable leaning on Ultron. Some people are taking the Biohazard lane because King Groot is their best out of these. Go ahead and do that if you have him. There are a number of different ways you can go. Pick a lane that you're comfortable with. The important thing is that because this is 631, you need an answer for the boss. So the boss is Medusa with Buffet and Do You Bleed. Wolverine bleeds, but not reliably enough to outdamage the Buffet, triggering off of his regens. I have heard of people doing it with Wolverine, but it's almost like taking Wolverine and Aegon, but worse. Like, the RNG required is just really difficult. I would not recommend it as your go-to. A lot of people have been having great success with Squirrel Girl, so I would definitely take a look around for videos of that. She's a great option. I think Joe Fixit might actually be the single easiest, but the problem is that he's a rare 5-star. I don't have him at all, and so a lot of you probably don't have him either. But he is capable of doing a lot of bleed damage. He can heal throughout the fight without buffs, and he can apply Petrifies and Disorients, which help you control Medusa. I think Joe would be amazing for the fight, but I was not able to test it. I actually ended up using Yellow Jacket, who has passive heal reversal built into his kit as well as a Petrify. I also run Max Despair and the Petrify Mastery. That helped quite a bit. You can check out that fight on the stream to see if that looks good to you. There's a fair amount of block damage, and I did use a rank 5. I think this is more if you just enjoy playing Yellow Jacket, you're not going to mind ranking him, then he's great for the fight. If you just want to take somebody to rank 4 and no higher and be done with this challenge forever, focus on Squirrel Girl. I think she's probably the easier one for this challenge. So for Revolution, this is you have to beat the Grandmaster with these 3, which, side shout out, love how thematic that is. Korg is starting a revolution, and these 3 are taking on the Grandmaster from the Thor Ragnarok movie. Love it. Like, I think everyone who's seen the movie got that, but I just shout out to Kabam on that. Now, unfortunately, I don't find any of the 3 of these fun to play. Hulk Ragnarok is outdated. Thor is much better now, but has a terrible moveset, in my opinion. And Korg is just actively bad. So this one can be painful, because a lot of people do not have these champions ranked up. As Kat notated here with the split border, you can use the 6-star or the 5-star of each of these, but at least as of me recording this video, you do have to have one of each. I have heard of multiple people taking this with like just Thor and Korg and not getting credit because Hulk Ragnarok wasn't on the team. If you read the challenge, it does say and. You need all three, so watch for that. But I did this with unduped rank 1 6 stars of each of them, and it wasn't that bad. So which path you take on this one, I think, is heavily dependent on who you have at what rank. I took the masochism path because I felt most comfortable with just blitzing through that with Thor, because out of mine, he was basically the only one who could do any damage. If you can take a bit more block damage, I heard that some people had good results with the rage path, but I think that one also has soft guard, and I just wasn't willing to deal with that because it would have ended up costing me more potions, I think. There's also the cosmic path up top, which is a lot of people's first run. Most of that path is very easy, but there is a Vision Arcus on there, which none of these three champions really directly counter unless you have like a decently high Sig Korg. So again, it just kind of depends on who you feel comfortable with using, who's your strongest character, where do you want to go. For me, masochism was absolutely the right choice, even without his signature ability, which would have made it a lot easier. Thor handled most of the defenders without too much trouble. As I mentioned earlier, there is a Warlock at the end that I really struggled with. But what you want to do for that fight is build up to your... First off, take off willpower. Build up to your special 3 and throw it while you have Boon of the Gods active. This will send you permanently unblockable for the rest of the fight. And then do not throw any more specials, even your special 3, unless your Thor is duped. But if your Thor is unduped, throw no more specials, just rely on being unblockable, keep pushing Warlock to his special 2 to avoid block damage, and you will get him down. It's rough. This is one where I would not judge anyone for waiting until these champions are better off or duped or something like that. But if you have basically any of them ranked, I do think there is a good path for you through this. You just need to be able to fight the Grandmaster. I know that causes some people trouble, but there are good videos out there for that. Again, that was the very first one I did, so there's some sloppy stuff in there, but I think that stream will help people because that's about the floor of what this could look like for you. It's hard for anyone to take this challenge down with weaker options than I had. So then we have to talk about the Abyss. With the Abyss in particular, I want to discuss something that was very important to my teams and my strategy, which makes it difficult for my teams and strategy to directly translate to all other people, and is also why I don't think revive counts are particularly helpful for this kind of thing. I was acutely aware, as many people are in planning for this, that it is much, much easier to farm revives than it is to farm potions on a meaningful scale. You can spend 20 minutes and get, 3, 4 revives, depending on how fast your auto fighters are. If you spend 20 minutes auto fighting Realm of Legends for health potions, maybe you pick up 2 or 3 level 3 potions. On the scale of the champions you're using in Abyss, that is nothing. And so I did some potion farming, which was helpful for me. But mostly I did revive farming, which meant that a lot of my fights were going to start at 20% health. And so all of my teams for the Abyss had that in mind, especially the Green Goblin one and the Carina's Challengers one. Like I said, Venompool is very efficient with small revives because he heals. Diablo is very efficient because he heals. Captain America is very efficient because he blocks well. Longshot blocks well. Immortal Abomination would be quite good because he heals. Like, you're getting the point here. Ultron could be good, although you would probably want to use like a couple potions to take him over 25%. Morningstar would be great because she heals. This is the kind of thing you want to keep in mind. If you have a lot of potions, or if you're willing to grind a lot of potions, then other options open themselves up a bit more. Like She-Hulk, for example, could have soloed some of the fights that I took in 2 or 3 tries with Captain America, but it probably would have required me to heal her up so that I had a little bit more room to block as I was getting rolling. I wasn't willing to do that. Some of these, especially like the Spider-Man champions, like Stark Enhanced Spider-Man, or, I'm sure even Carnage could do work. Some of those slightly more fragile champions, you're going to need to heal up for them to get through those fights. I did have to heal up Spider-Ham for his fights to make sure he got through Mephisto and some of those others. You have to take into account that cost. Abyss cannot be meaningfully measured in pure revives, in my opinion. You have to think of it in terms of revives and potions. So when you are planning for any of these 3 challenges in particular, a little bit the Act 6 ones, but especially these 3 Abyss challenges, be very aware of not just what fights your team can take, but what fights your team can take starting at what health level. That's actually, even with the mutant team, there is a synergy you can bring where you can turn on the recoil tree masteries and everyone just gets 60% poison resistance at the start, and then so they heal all the time. That's amazing. That's the kind of thing that you want to be aware of, because if you're taking fights that require healing, that kind of synergy can literally save you hundreds and hundreds of units. Because if you run out of potions, you're either going to start being way less efficient with your revives because you're not able to heal, or you're going to have to start spending units on potions even though you grinded enough revives and you kind of bypass the point of farming, right? So assuming that you want to be efficient about Abyss, just include that in your planning. For each of the fights you're looking at, for each of the matchups you're looking at, go, okay, who can take this fight out of my team, and how much health do I think they need to start with so that I'll be happy with how they do. The mutant one is the easy one. And that's just because the mutant class is absurdly strong. There are a number of options for this. I've even heard people are having a lot of fun with Kitty Pryde, who I didn't really have as an option. Bunch of things you can do. I followed a path laid out by my alliance mate Nerd and by BMcG over in 4 Loki. I'll link BMcG's video in the description because he outlines basically what I took each fight with. That path relies heavily on Apocalypse and Strife. Emphasis on Strife. You can do most of those fights with Apocalypse, leaning on the Strife synergy, but you do kind of need Strife ranked because he directly answers a few of the more problematic fights and is a really good option for the Collector. There's another path that doesn't lean on Strife so much, but does use Professor X a lot. I'm not that confident in my Professor X gameplay, so I decided to skip out on that, but there are definitely videos out there. I've seen other people use Archangel. I think one person was even going to bring like Rogue. Like, there are things you can do with this one. There are a lot of options. Mutants are powerful and fun to play. I don't think there's much trouble with this one. You just kind of have to pick a path that will work for you. I think this is probably also the easiest one to incorporate into if you haven't explored Abyss and you're trying to knock down a path towards eventual exploration. Then this is one where you're like, yeah, you can probably just pick mutants that answer any given path. They are that good. So this middle one, Come Out to Play, this is kind of nice because you don't need to finish the path. It feels really weird to quit out in the middle of the path, but you don't need to finish it. You just need to get up to Green Goblin and take him down with only these champions on your team. A lot of people are relying on Null for this one. He's amazing in Abyss. He specifically trivializes Iron Man Infinity War, who's a very difficult fight. I've also seen a lot of people use Anti-Venom to solo Darkhawk. If you're comfortable with Stealth Spidey to take down Luke Cage, that becomes very possible. There's also some options to cheese fights with Miles because of how he interacts with unblockable specials. Number of things you can do here. I do not have Null. I do not have Anti-Venom. And I wasn't super comfortable with Miles, and I don't like playing Stealth Spidey. So what I went with was a team that leaned primarily on Mysterio with the Penny Parker synergy that allows him to do as many poisons as he wants with his heavies without consuming that chemical gas, and Venompool, who has excellent healing, especially if the opponent can gain armor ups, so he was really sustainable on small revives, and can just do a ton of bleed damage. For the other fights, I brought in Symbiote Supreme, because he just destroyed the Cosmics, and Spider-Ham, who helped me out with Mephisto in particular. That's a fight that you definitely need a counter for if you're headed that way. So then, over here, for Carina's Challengers, I think this is the hardest one, because you have to do the whole path. You have to take out the Collector, like with the Mutant team. But there are not a lot of good Collector options on here. So notice that there are no Cosmic Champions at all. There's obviously no Mutants, because they were over here. It's just hard to take down the Collector with these. Out of them, I think Mole Man is one of the best. Falcon is also quite good. I've seen some good things out of high-skill Shang-Chi play. I have none of those champions. I do have a rank 4 5-star Falcon, but I talked to Iron Patriot, a friend of mine over at NXS, and he said that Falcon didn't actually do that much more damage, but because he was a 5-star, you needed to heal him basically all the way up. And I just didn't have a lot of potions. So I would have had to invest catalysts in him and then use units to buy potions for that to work. Was not going to work for me. As with some of my other challenges, I was really interested in who was going to be efficient on small revives, so I leaned very heavily on Diablo, who can heal, and Captain America Infinity War, who can block for days and days and days. He doesn't have as much damage because, again, there's no Cosmics on the team, so you can't get those armor breaks, but he's just that solid. You don't even really need the dupe at all. Mine is only Sig 40, so he definitely wasn't doing that for me. I also brought my 5-star Void to take out Darkhawk, Old Man Logan, a couple others. Highly recommend that. I brought my She-Hulk to take down Luke Cage. That was the single worst fight of the whole thing other than the Collector for me. He just very often did not play ball. I did not play perfectly. I know the limits of my own skill set. If you have the time, practice this fight. Get Darkhawk down with Void as a solo and practice this fight before you commit to a full path with it. I wanted to get it done before the mastery swaps associated with the Battlegrounds beta went away, so I did not have time. I did not wait. And I paid for it. It cost me a fair few revives. I've also heard Shang-Chi can be better for that. Consider that. Or you can just go through one of the other paths, like you can take down Thing. A lot of these champions can easily take down Thing, but then you also have to take down Iron Man, Infinity War, and Mephisto, and a few others, and that just would have made me feel like I was leaning a little bit too heavily on my 5-star Void, because 5 stars just really suffer in the Abyss. The lack of adrenaline means that you're taking a lot more accumulated damage than 6 stars do when they heal it back. So I decided not to go with that. And then the other champion I brought in was Longshot. Now, he overlapped a little bit with Diablo, but he was better for certain fights. He has very solid block proficiency. He was fantastic for me. So I would not have gone with another team out of who I had, but if I had had a high-ranked Mole Man or a Shang-Chi, I probably would have taken them. But there are just a ton of teams you can pull out of here. I've heard of great things with Morningstar. I think J-Nick took in Howard the Duck. Ultron can be great. I'm sure there's been some great stuff done with I-Hulk or even Immortal Abomination. Hawkeye can take a lot of those fights. What you want to do out of this one is figure out the champions that you have ranked or are willing to rank, and just pick out a path that works. Obviously, you have to consider if you're trying to also explore Abyss, that gets a little harder, but You don't necessarily have to build this team for the collector, because unless you have one of the ones I mentioned, or I found Cap and Diablo quite good for it too. Diablo basically took down the first half while he could still be poisoned. Cap was really good for the last half. It's just be aware of the collector fight. You're not going to have a great counter to it. You're just not. There isn't one on this list. But have the fight in mind when you're planning so that you know who is going to be handling him, and you can get it down without too much trouble. So after looking at all of these, like I said, my total unit count was only 139. I'm extremely happy with that. But a big chunk of that was that when I did these 3 Abyss runs, mastery swaps were free. So if you are planning your run and you're thinking things like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have recoil on for Null, I'm going to have recoil on for Diablo, I'm going to have recoil on for the healing over here with the mutant champions, think about whether your other characters are usable with that. If you have recoil on for Diablo, are you going to be able to keep your rhythm with She-Hulk? Because you probably have to throw special ones. How is that going to work for Void? If you have recoil on for Null, are you going to be able to get through a fight with Spider-Ham? These are the kinds of things you have to think about before you head in, because if you go into a path planning on doing these mastery swaps, but you haven't planned it out properly, and you're like, okay, well, let me just pick a number for the Goblin one. Let's say, like, I have 50 revives, and I have 1,000 units I'm willing to spend on additional revives if I run out. If you end up spending 500 of those units on mastery swaps, then you have half the cushion you thought you did. So just be aware of that stuff going in. Like I said at the top, it is possible to be very efficient with how you go through these challenges. It is possible to get through them spending no real money and barely any in-game currency. You just have to be aware of how best to leverage your items. So again, in the description, I'm going to link the videos that I've mentioned as we've gone through this. I'm going to link the playlist of all of my streams for these various challenges. Check those out. You can comment on any of those streams if you have questions for me. I'll try and get to them as soon as I can. Like I said, I plan to timestamp all the streams with specific fights. That may not be done by the time this video goes live, but I will be working on that this week. And I hope this helps you. There is some real fun to be had in this content, and the rewards are excellent. The idea of getting closer to another rank 4 is really cool, because I have one rank 4, and it's awesome. So if that's something you're working on, or even if you just want to do 1 or 2 of these because, I don't know, you need to finish Revolution so you can get some Tier 4 Basic to take somebody up to rank 3, or you just want to finish the Realm of Legends ones to get 3 free 6 stars. Free in quotes. Then plan for that. You don't have to treat it as a monolith. But whatever you choose to do out of this set of 9 challenges, I hope you're able to plan for it in a way that makes sense, that is efficient, and that you can be happy with coming out the other side of. So I wish you luck in your clears, and I will catch y'all all next time. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.